Yeah, okay. I can't wait anymore. There are kids playing in the background. I think the noise, but I think you guys can hear me just fine. And of course, as I begin, there's sirens. You all know that's the custom when I make a video. There's noise. I gotta end, but I'm not. I'm just gonna continue. I already addressed this subject partially in the video that I made about God permitting prostitution in the land of Israel, that he permitted it. Uh, let me just brush over this because I know I'm not going to get likes just off of this. And I don't care. I don't get likes anyway. My videos are not popular because it's true videos. In the devil's world, the falsehood is what's popular. Most Christian videos that you see that have a big following, they all teach the same doctrines. Hellfire, Jesus is God, the Trinity. Every good person goes to heaven. All bad people goes to hell. These are, in the devil's world, that's going to be perpetuated. There is not a single YouTuber who is a Christian. Sorry for that distraction. They all, I mean, it's so obvious to me. Every single Christian YouTube video teaches the same thing. And they'll have hundreds of thousands of followers, subscribers, or shouldn't say followers, that's bad terminology, especially for Christians, right? We follow Yehoshua, the Son of God, to lead to Christ. To lead to God. But they all teach the same doctrines. You're going to get the same thing in every single channel. You're not going to get anything different. Everybody knows. You ask anybody in the street, they're going to say, oh yeah, Christ is God, Trinity, hellfire, good people go to heaven. This hellfire thing, man, but... So which I would address all of these, right? So, like I said, I already mentioned Job partially in relation to Melchizedek in the video I did about prostitution, God permitting prostitution. Let me touch on the prostitution thing a little bit so that you understand that you're the one who's wrong, not me. Okay? Remember, I used to be in the same boat as you. Like, it would be like crazy for me to even think of that back when I lacked knowledge of the truth about the Bible. But the two prostitute women who came to Solomon were prostitutes in the land of Israel. If there was a penalty for prostitution in the land of Israel, Solomon in all his wisdom would have sentenced the two women to death. Imagine two faggots coming before Solomon about any case. There is no case. Put them to death. So the fact that the two prostitutes can present a case before Solomon, after Solomon granted the child to the other prostitute, what did the prostitutes go back to doing? They went right back to their prostitution in the land of Israel. And who were they committing prostitution with? The sons of Israel. So there is a prohibition against prostitution, but there are very strict prohibitions. What it is if you are the daughter of a priest, whether you are living in your father's house or not, you cannot be a prostitute. If you are living in your father's house, you cannot be a prostitute. And when you do become a prostitute, if those stipulations do not apply to you, you cannot be a Kadesh, temple, cult prostitute. But as long as these things do not apply to the situation, you can be a prostitute. But okay, so anyway, if you want, stop watching the video and look into that if you want. But if you want to keep listening to what I have to say, keep listening. So there's so much in my head. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to address all of them or if I'll forget some. Okay, again, sorry for all the distractions. To try to get my points together, I did write a couple things down because I know how it gets when I make my videos. Lots of distractions start to happen. So I remember my friend sent me a question about whether isn't Melchizedek Christ? It just seems logical to conclude that. And as I wrote the few things that I knew about the subject, the more it dawned upon me that no, Job really is Melchizedek. The first indication is the age. Abraham died at like 175, 174. Job lived 140 years after his trial. 140 years after his trial. I'm going to address the questions that I know will be lingering in your head. Just give me a moment. But we know Job went through his trial when he was fairly older in age. So that would mean that his total amount of years falls within the lifespan of Abraham. So that means he was living around the time of Abraham. Just off of that, we know they're living in the same time period. It was not pre-flood, it was post-flood. And it was not after the time period of Abraham, because of the age in which they died at. Right? After that time period, people didn't live that long. Right? So he definitely lived around the time of Abraham. But didn't God say about Job that he was the most righteous in all the earth and that there was no one else like him? So if he's living around the time of Abraham, then that means what? Abraham wasn't? No. Job was born before Abraham. And when Job was younger, Abraham was not yet born. Now, at this time period that Job is alive, he has not been tested by the devil yet. So he's not a young man, but he's fairly up in age. And then, so since Abraham is not born yet, or even if he is born, he has not yet lived enough years for God to deem him as righteous. So in this time period, they are living around the same time period. Job is the meekest and the most righteous of all the earth. Sorry if my rabbit's making noises with the plate. Pay attention. So Abraham 174, Job 140 years after, living 140 more years after, he lived for 4 more generations, to see 4 more generations of his descendants. Before that, he lived about, we could speculate about between 60 to 80 years. So that puts him easily past 200. So, and when you look, it says, so when Abraham is born, now he is also one of the most righteous in the earth. So they are contemporaries, both righteous. And then he comes to meet Abraham after the war with the 3 kings. Okay. And the kings knew who Job was. Now, is Job a king? Okay. Job was very rich before his trial. And after his trial, remember, before his trial, he was the richest of all the people of the East. Now, when the term in Hebrew, all the people of the East, can mean literally the East, or the Orientals. Some translations say the Orientals, or it could mean he was the richest of all of the people of the past. Among all the people who had lived from the flood, he was the richest of them. Okay, so he was a very rich man. After his trial, God gave him double or even more than what he had. So this means he's really, really rich already, and he's even double the amount of wealth he already had, which makes him royalty, which makes him kingly. He's like a king, and he took care of the oppressed. He took care of the fatherless and the widows. That was one of his justifications for his righteousness before God, before his 3 false comforters. So he is like a judge. He holds a high status, not just off of his wealth and not just the double amount of wealth he had, but because also we know not just kingly status, but he was a priest. As I was writing to my friend, I was putting these things together. Like, wait, he was a priest because he would offer up sacrifices in behalf of his children in case they cursed God in their heart. And God told one of the 3 false comforters that they would have to go and bring sacrifices to Job so that Job would pray in their behalf. Otherwise, God would punish them strictly. But since Job prayed for them, God said he would not bring the punishment that they deserved upon them. So Job acted as an intercessor, as an intermediary, just like Christ does for us, just as a high priest does for the people of Israel. You understand? So, and also when I was reading, like a long time ago, when I was living with my father, I was reading the accounts of Job, and it dawned upon me, there are too many things that Job is aware of, that he knows, that it wouldn't make sense for him to know unless he was a prophet. So it bothered me so much that as I'm reading the account, it bothered me so much. I'm like, wait, this account is fiction, because if it's fiction, it will make sense that he's saying all these things, because these things are only things that a prophet would know. He speaks of the celestial bodies. He speaks of things about God that how does he know that unless God told him? And as a matter of fact, if you read the book of Job and you read the book of Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, the words of Solomon, and if you read the book of Psalms, there are lots of similarities between the two. So much so that you would think that Solomon or David, not David really, but you would think that Solomon wrote the book of Job. This was what I was thinking when I was a younger person. Because there's too many things that Job knows. So Job is not just a regular person on the earth who how can you know these things? So he was privy to things revealed to him by God. So he was more of like a prophet figure. Okay, so again, if you don't know that, then obviously you haven't read the books of Solomon and the books of Job. When you read the two, it made me think maybe Moses didn't write the book of Job, and maybe Job wasn't a real person. That was really bothering me. I'm like, maybe this is a fiction, But I also know that he's referenced in other places in the Bible, so he must have been a real person. So that was really bothering me. So as I was replying to my friend, all of this was coming together, and I'm like, no wonder. It all makes sense. Okay, so let me add more to it. So he's aware of things that the nation of Israel is aware of, but the nation of Israel is not created yet. This is around the time period of Abraham, the same age group, right? The lifespan is the time of Abraham. Okay, so he acted as an intermediary, like a high priest. He prayed in behalf of people. He prayed on behalf of his children. He prayed in behalf of his false comforters. And God would listen to prophets to forgive people. God said, even about Israel, even if Samuel and Moses were to pray to me for me to forgive you, I would not forgive you. So prophets, this was something that the Almighty said when Israel was like really, really sinful. So prophets acted as intermediaries. High priests also act as intermediaries. So Christ is a prophet, he's a high priest, and he intermedes for us. Job did the exact same thing. And his wealth, the amount of wealth that he accumulated, would put him as a royal, kingly person. He was the greatest of all the people who ever lived before him. That's what the account says. He was the greatest of all the Orientals. And remember, the East, the term the East in Hebrew, can mean of all the people before him or all of the people in the literal place of the East. Also, he lived in the land of Uz. He lived in the land of Uz. Uz was one of the descendants of Shem. And we know all the Israelites came from Shem. All those who bears the blessing, the royal priesthood, the blessing of prophetship, all these people always stem from the line of Shem. Not Japheth, definitely not Ham. Shem. The land Uz was a descendant of Shem. Job lived in the land of Uz. So he's a relative of Abraham, Job. He's a relative of Abraham. He's privy to things that only people of the line of Shem are privy to, like I mentioned. The things that he knew. Okay, as he was making his case to the false comforters. So when some say that Melchizedek could be Shem, no. He's a descendant of Shem. So he could not be Shem. And he was living in the land of Uz. So that means that Uz was not only born yet, but he already became well situated to have a land named after him. And Job was living in the land of Uz. So Melchizedek, well, if Job is Melchizedek, then Melchizedek could not be Shem. That's what I should be saying. But I strongly believe that Melchizedek is Job. Now, Abraham gave a tenth of everything to to Job, to Melchizedek. Could this be part of the reason why Job was so rich? Because he received a tenth of everything from the people around him. That was probably part of how he accumulated his wealth. That was probably how God added to his blessings. This would also make sense because the reason why we are supposed to give a tenth, like to the church or whatever, is because the pastor is supposed to use that tenth from the community to take care of the fatherless and the widows, which was what Job was doing. He was a righteous man. Now, king of Salem. Salem is Jerusalem. At this point in time that Abraham is alive, it's called Salem. At this time that Abraham is alive, it's called Salem. Job is like a royal, priestly, kingly status. And I'm going to address the without father and without mother in genealogy. That's an idiom. It's not to be taken literal, which I also addressed this in the video that I made about prostitution. So I'm forgetting a couple of things. So it's almost like Job is passing down the mantle of the next most righteous person on the earth to Abraham. Because you know how much faith it takes for you to go up against 5 kings with just your trained henchmen in your household. Abraham took the trained men of his household and went up against 5 kings, and God delivered. This proved that not only was God with him, but Abraham must have been a very righteous person for God to deliver him, these 5 kings into his hands like that. It's not an easy thing to pull that off. So it's like Job is passing down the mantle of the next most righteous person on the earth to Abraham. When the kings were gonna give Abraham like gifts, Abraham declined it because he did not want them to be accredited for making Abraham rich, right? He said, so that you would not say that it was you who made me rich, right? So these gifts can make you rich. 1/10 of everything being given to Job, acting as a priest, will make you rich, and he was very rich. And the land of Uz is literally pretty close to Jerusalem. And if you're that wealthy, remember back then your wealth was based on the amount of land you have. So if he's the greatest of all the people of the East, his land, his territory spread it pretty far. So that means since the land of Uz is already close to Jerusalem, he is king of Jerusalem. He's like the head of Jerusalem. That was part of his blessing. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting, but I guess I shouldn't be spoon feeding you guys. You should be able to. This should like invoke you to do your own research. But I strongly feel that feeling that I was having, that Job is Melchizedek, I'm pretty sure that powerful feeling that I was having as I was explaining to my friend, as it was just dawning upon me more and more and more, is from the Almighty. And you guys do not know how much the Almighty is with me. I mean, I know most of you will think the thing I talk about is blasphemous or whatever. If you guys, like I always tell you, just do your own research, okay, and you'll see. I'm telling you guys, God is really with me. See, y'all just don't know. But anyway, I'm gonna end it here, and peace. Hope you guys look into this some more. Peace. I just listened to the video back, and I forgot to mention to clarify the without father or mother or genealogy. Okay, so remember, Paul is the one who writes this. This isn't recorded in Genesis when Melchizedek comes, or when Job, right, comes to Abraham. This is recorded by Paul. This is a Greek term, an idiom, which without father or mother or genealogy is a Greek term that Paul uses, but it commonly refers to children who are either illegitimate, orphaned, or abandoned, right? So like the Greek word Paul uses for fatherless is apator, which means fatherless, and then he says amator, which is motherless, and agenealogitos, which is without genealogy, right? Because since he has no father and since he has no mother, don't see it as the literal term as he doesn't have a father, he doesn't have a mother. No, he is on the earth, so he came from a father and a mother, but the database is not recorded, right? And put it this way, not so much that we don't know that Job, not so much that Job didn't know his parents. It could mean that because since Job was a caretaker of widows and orphans, it would make sense that he himself was in the same situation, like illegitimate, orphaned, or abandoned. And so he took care of those who were in his similar situation when he was a child. It could mean that, but also understand that since this is the Bible, and pretty much Samuel, the prophet Samuel, we know who his parents are. Moses, we know who his parents are. Samuel, we know how he died, or at least the record indicates that he died and accredited information to his death. Moses, we know how he died, but with Job, we have no information in the written record about Job's father or Job's mother, and we have no written record about how he was born, and we have no written record about how he died. So he is an important figure, important enough to be mentioned in the Bible. So important that he is the wealthiest of all the Orientals. He's a kingly status. He acts as an intercessor. He's a high priest. He's a king of Salem. But yet we have no information about Job's birth. We have no information about Job's parents. And we have no information about how Job died. Right? So he is like those things, as far as the Bible is concerned, he is without father, he is without mother, and he is without genealogy. However, he did have a mother, he did have a father. He's a king of Salem. He's a literal human person ruling. Okay, so recap. So Melchizedek was without father and was without mother, meaning fatherless or motherless, or that the account of his mother and father are absent from the written record, right? Without beginning of days nor end of life. We know how Moses was born. We know how Moses died. Right? We know Samuel was born of Hannah, his mother, father Elkanah. We know how Samuel died, and Saul tried to bring back his spirit or whatever, right? We know these things, but as regards Job, we don't. These things are absent from the written record. So since his genealogy is not recorded, when he was born, when he died is unknown, his priesthood, therefore, can be considered as something in perpetual. It's still ongoing. It's still ongoing. You know, that's the enigmatic, or you could say idiomatic part about it. Right? I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. So it's not so much that he's not important, because obviously he's important enough to be mentioned, but his descent is not counted. Right? There's no record of his record, and his descent and pedigree is like nowhere to be found, because it's not important in relation to the matter at hand, which is the book and who it really concerns, Christ. Okay, now that you've listened to what I've had to say, the explanation, now see if this makes sense to you. Imagine a figure like Job, so important as to be mentioned and have a whole book made just for him, but yet absolutely no mention of who his father is or who his mother is, or even the mentioning of his sons' names. Not even up to the 4th generation. Almost as if intentional, for such a thing does not happen in the Bible. Intentional may be so as not to pollute his stance by mentioning his descendants who did not live up to what he himself represented. Hence his stance stays forever. So, I mean, obviously, these are just my opinions, but, you know, it's educated opinions. So, you take it with a grain of salt.